Okay, everybody. Good evening. It's Sunday, July 7th, and this is the week 3 overview. I am planning on posting a few other shorter videos later this week. I went back and reviewed the ones that I used last year for this course in summer 1 of 2023. I'm going to redo them and include some different feedback based on this class. And so look out for those a little later. This week, we're going to start talking content. You're writing your chapter 1. And I'm not going to read the learning outcomes to you going forward for this course because they recur and you can read. But they are similar. I want to emphasize, however, that we are going to continue to emphasize professional reflection. The reason for this is that the capstone involves extensive reflection as part of the exploratory experience of qualitative research. I wrote in the discussion board on many of your posts to remind you that this is an exploration of qualitative research methods. The capstone is an exploration of qualitative research methods to introduce you to the process of using qualitative research as a reflective practitioner. In the course of this capstone at Concordia, you will not be collecting data formally, as you might in another program, because that would require an extensive review process, which we used to do, but Concordia has since taken out to reflect a better preparation for you going into your role as a Master of Education and a reflective practitioner and servant leader. I say that, and I hope it brings a sense of relief to you because it means that your task is different. I see a lot of you are very ambitious and very high achieving and want to do quite a bit, and I'm proud of you for that. However, we want to remember that the scope of the capstone at Concordia has some limits to it for a purpose. That's because it is more reasonable to introduce you to qualitative research that you will use in your role as a practitioner later than to expect you to do a very large task in a short period of time that is not quite as applicable for all of you. You do not take quantitative statistical methods in the course of your study in this master's degree program, but perhaps you've had that in the past. I did as part of my undergraduate study, and many of you may have, and that's great. However, it's not required for the capstone at Concordia for this program, and it's also not something you would do without getting appropriate permissions, and that's for ethical reasons. So take a deep breath and know that this capstone project is articulated, it's planned, it's purposeful, and it's detailed, but it is not as big as you may imagine it is in some ways. So I encourage you to, I like the phrase, stay in your lane. We're going to go step by step by step. Doing qualitative research is meant to introduce you to the practice of these strategies so that you are familiar with them. And you don't have to learn it and have such a large outcome dependent be on it. Okay. Some of you had a great experience reviewing Dr. Webb's videos around library research, but not all of you are quite there yet. Some of you need to continue to practice those skills and access the databases. We all will be, because over the course of this class, this course, you will be continuing to practice those skills. It is not adequate to only use Google Scholar for a capstone. You must learn to use the other one. So if you didn't get it yet, that's okay. Now is the time to do it. In upcoming assignments, not the one coming up this week, but the one after, assignments number 3A and 3B, you're going to be beginning the literature review. You will need 8 and then 8 more at least articles from primary sources. primary sources are those that are journal articles that are peer-reviewed. They need to pertain to your topic, and they need to be recent. And we say 5 years is the guideline on that. I say 5-ish years, 4-ish years, only to the extent that time passes pretty quickly. And the volume of research that is published and released now with technology and just the world that we're in is amazing. So I like to think 4-ish instead of 5 in terms of what is recent. Because if you were doing a thesis that collected data, and if you were testing it, or if you were doing a dissertation, which some of you will in the future, you have to remember that process takes time. And by the time you get to the end of it, the literature review you did may have some outdated pieces because they were close to being 4 or 5 years old. And that amount of time has suddenly pushed them past the limit. There's so much research being released and published right now that we simply have to think on the shy side of time because it passes quicker than we think. So when you're reviewing for sources, you're looking for a primary source, a journal, a research and peer-reviewed journal. We'll talk about that in a minute. That is in the last 5 years and is from an appropriate, credible publication. To do that, you will use different databases and different kinds of searches, proximity search, term search, and so forth. Now, a lot of you are feeling a little worried or a little bit stressed about your questions, your research questions, and your scope. And this is the part that is challenging. It is. This is research. You're selecting an area of interest that you observe, and you're learning to narrow it down so that it is an appropriate topic or scope to address in qualitative research. It's hard. It's really hard. I know some of you feel very confident in what you want to do and think you have it right on, and maybe get a little frustrated when you then get feedback saying, no, keep going. It's going to happen. It's part of qualitative research. I am not doing it to be mean. I'm doing it to be helpful. Trust me. The assignments in this course are planned and articulated for a purpose. And like many things, if you do not address an issue early, it then snowballs. And we want to make sure we prevent that from happening. So any feedback that I give you, please remember, it is purposeful. I'm not perfect, but it is purposeful. And we can just communicate about it. I am noting and giving you feedback on your writing. Research writing is a skill. It is skill-based, like many, many other things you've learned. And you can do it. And you've done it before with lots of other things. First of all, research writing is not the same as just academic writing. It is also not the same as other kinds of writing you may have done, like creative writing, perhaps, or expository writing, persuasive writing. Okay. So be encouraged in that when you've learned something once, you can transfer a lot of information, and learning a new way, it's easier because you've learned one way or more already. You are good readers and good writers, but that does not mean you are automatically a good research writer. Nobody is born with all the knowledge and skills they need in life. We all have to learn. And it does take time, practice, perseverance, and grit, patience, sense of humor, all the things. Think about riding a bike. Probably most of us have done that or something similar. But for me, riding a bike is hard. It was hard in the beginning. I was 5. All my cousins could do it. I desperately wanted to ride my bike so we could go out in the neighborhood because it was the 80s and that's what we did. That was freedom for a kid, getting to go with the big kids, right? Anyway, when you're learning to ride a bike, it is hard until you can do it. And you might make some mistake. You might fall. You might get injured. I did. Going downhill, I fell, scraped the inside of my ear. I don't know how that happened, but I did, and it hurt. And I didn't want to try anymore because it hurt so bad. But what do? We get back up and we try again. We don't give up. We keep trying. And you try, and you try, and you try, and you practice. Maybe you don't do it going down a hill with somebody pushing you, which is what I did. Okay, so eventually You can do it. And it's not hard anymore, is it? And you don't forget, unless you get a head injury, but really, right? It's hard until you can do it. And then once you can do it, it's easy and you never forget. That is learning a skill. And it's different for all of us. Some it may seem automatic and easier, but it probably isn't. They weren't born that way. You have to give it time and keep trying and not compare yourself against others and know there was always room for improvement. Now, when it comes to being detail-oriented, well, that's just, I was born for that. It's my thing. I will be nitty-picky on a lot of things because the more feedback I give you, it's purposeful. It's intended to call your attention to something you should fix now, because the sooner you do, there'll be some more. But it goes step by step by step. You don't want to carry a mistake through and have that linger when you have other things to be learning. So if I give you feedback, I'm not going to give you the answer right away. I want you to access your manual, right? Your publication manual, APA for 7th. And I need you to look things up and try to figure out why I might be giving you feedback about a convention. Now, I'm not perfect. I did my dissertation, all my graduate work on 6, not 7. I'm still having to do the crossover. I know. They can have my 2 spaces after a period when they part from my cold dark. Yes, I know I'm trying really hard to change. I am, but I'm trying. I'm not perfect. There are a lot of conventions that are different. I'm learning too. However, it is the standard and I have to look at my manual every time I'm working. It's okay. You should. Now, if you don't already have the APA publication manual for 7, you really should consider buying a copy. You will not know it automatically. Using Purdue OWL is a good resource, but it is not complete. I strongly recommend that you have a tangible copy of the APA manual, publication manual, because our brains interact differently with paper than they do online. And I promise you, I know this about brain learning. When you enact more than one modality, your engagement changes and you remember and learn better. It's just the way it is. We're humans. So I strongly encourage you to have a copy of the manual. I really love that some of you said that you have enjoyed and fallen in love with using APA. You will do it in your sleep at some point. I did. So there's that. I want to encourage you to use the online writing lab. It is open all summer for you. That's what they're there for. And there are different people and they're great. Everybody works with different styles and different approaches. We respond just like we do with teaching and teachers. They are there and they are available at different times. So whatever flexibility you need, figure it out and access it. And the sooner you do, the better. Some of you already have. It is required at the end of this course, but why not do it sooner? You're paying for it. And I can give you feedback, but as your instructor, my job is to facilitate the course and give you feedback on the content more so than it is for the writing. You'll get more if you access them as well. I'll do my best with the writing, but it's not my primary role. And I'm not as good at it as they are. They are really good at it. In fact, I might give them a call myself. Now, I give you feedback in a variety of places, and I'm doing my best to get it to you as soon as I can. Something with a head injury is that it takes me longer to do everything. And I do try very hard to give you the best feedback I can in a efficient way. I will give you feedback on the assignment rubrics in the little text boxes. I may give you feedback on your text or on your submission. I do my best to do both. Please read them. Please follow the suggestions. Please also find a buddy in class, someone with whom you can interact, if not only asynchronously via email or text, whatever, but synchronously by phone or Zoom, or if they're nearby in person. It will help. I say this because we are all learning new information, and sometimes it just helps to speak out loud or interact with a person in parallel, because if you ask each other, you'll both learn and teach each other, and you may save yourself time. And you also have me to ask to clarify, but I cannot do it for all of you at the same time, especially when it takes me twice as long. It's like working a full-time job for a part-time job. That's a hobby. But by doing both, you have the benefit of asking me as well as asking each other. And if one of you has heard from me about what my feedback specifically means, it just works nicely that way. We've done it in the past, so I encourage you to reach out and connect with someone if you know them or if you need a recommendation. It truly does help. To that end, I'll be assigning some groups. I put that off a little bit at the beginning of the course because I find I have a sense of who might support each other, might work well together based upon the feedback I get from you and just interactions with you. So I try to be purposeful in a positive way to manage that. And also because it's our discretion to do so as instructors. So take advantage of whatever opportunity you have. It will make this course easier. We'll be like a family at the end of the next course anyway. So think about those strategies, please. And if you're not clear about feedback that I give you, certainly do ask. I make mistakes. I also want to say that, and I really cannot fix it because I've been trying. In Canvas, which is a very good platform, I actually use it myself as a student in another university. There's a feature called Speed Grader. Only in my head now I see Speed Racer, but Speed Grader. And there's a functionality that often when I'm grading, it doesn't save what I've done and it flips out of the screen and I lose whatever I've currently been working on. It's different in other aspects, but for some reason in SpeedGrader, I just can't get it fixed. What that means is when you get your grade, please review it and review the feedback. And if something seems really, really off, please let me know. Because one, it could be SpeedGrader. I accidentally clicked through and didn't save something. It happens often. And two, it might be my brain injury. Maybe I made a mistake. If I've made a mistake with your grading, absolutely please let me know. I'm happy to fix it. I make mistakes all the time like that. I don't like it. And it happens and I can't fix the things that are within my control. So please do help me out by reviewing and letting me know if something is way, way, way off. But at the same time, know that I am giving you feedback, which might seem picky, a little nitpicky, for a purpose. If I do not tell you now that you're getting it wrong and take some point from it, you will not know that it's wrong. In my experience, and this is just natural, but as instructors, we've been through a interruption to how people learn. And I am speaking about the COVID-19 pandemic. We were just getting it through, and we were getting through ourselves. We have not always given you as much feedback as we would like to because it takes a long time. But my experience is that many students come in feeling very confident in their writing skills, and that's great. Many of you should be. And many of you come in feeling that you're not good enough, and that's not true. We're all at a different point on the preparation spectrum, and research writing is a skill that is hard. I think I'm good at it, and I still make a lot of mistakes. So if I give you feedback, please, if you see something wrong, please don't come at me at a huff. It is either a mistake or purposeful. The sooner you correct a misunderstanding, the better and smoother your research writing will get. So this is sort of like building an airplane while you're flying it. And I'm sorry, I don't know how else to teach it, except to say I have a background in ed options and alternative education. I was a Montessori/constructivist style learner. My mom was a librarian and a teacher, and I can just find a way. One way or another, I'll find a way. I have a liberal arts background. If something you've tried so far hasn't worked, I have lots of other suggestions. And if they don't work, we'll keep going until we do. I haven't had a single student not pass capstone yet. Close, but not yet. And I don't expect to have any yet either. Okay. So speak up, speak early, speak often, but please read the feedback before you reach out, simply because it might be that easy. It takes me a little longer because I am purposeful in my feedback. So whatever questions you have about that, please feel free to reach out to me one-on-one by phone, by text, or by Zoom, whenever is a good time for you. Okay. So let's talk about this week. We start with the Christian message, which I invite you to join in, but it is not required. This week's Christian message is about bias and subjectivity, which are present in our hearts. It's natural. We're humans. Our view of the world is always affected by this lens or tainted with imperfection if we go to the scripture. So I invite you to review the scripture, James chapter 2, verse 1, which tells us, show no partiality as you hold the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory. And then if you choose to, join me in the reflection that follows. A note about the extensive reading required for this course. I know. It's a lot. You are expected to read it. Here's my suggestion. Skim. Pace yourself. Chunk it. Don't expect to do it all at one time and remember it. We don't really learn well that way. Do some and take a break. And when I say break, I mean like a quick drink of water, not like me, feed the dog, move the laundry, answer a couple texts, get a snack. That's stopping. Take a quick break and then go back to it, because when you take a quick break, you can reset your focus and you can learn again. Chunk it and take quick breaks. Okay. Plan ahead if you can. I used to do all my work in advance of deadlines and always have time to spare. And then life happened, and as an adult, I had a full-time job, and then I was a student. I know life isn't realistic like that, but with the extensive amount of reading, you are responsible for it. I suggest that you do some skimming, because you can always return later. Skimming means return later, and notate. I suggest chunking it and taking short breaks, and I suggest planning ahead, because it is extensive and it's not beach reading. Okay, it's not. Now, I personally like reading reference books. I collect them. Both my parents were librarians, so it's a habit. However, you probably don't do it for fun, or maybe you do. I don't know. These books have a lot of information that is new that you are not expected to memorize. However, you need to be responsible for it. And again, I just want to say there's a lot every week, so pace yourself. Okay. This week, you'll be working on assignment number 2, which I'll speak about in just a minute. But looking forward, you'll be doing the annotated bibliography. It's one of my favorite assignments. I love bibliographies. I love annotating. I love reference books, all the things. But you'll be doing an annotated bibliography, and it is a 2-part assignment. There's part 3A, assignment 3A, where you'll review half of the required resources for your capstone. And then there's assignment number 3B, where you would do the other half, or another 8. So you should have 8 and 8 for the assignments. The goal is overall that you have about 20 primary research sources, peer-reviewed journal articles within the last 5-ish years, think on the lower end, 4-ish, 5 years old, that are credible and applicable to your topic. The scope of your topic, I promise, you'll know you're in the zone when you have about 20-ish, not many more than 20, and not struggling to find 20. Because if there are more than 20, let's say quite a few more than 20, maybe you didn't narrow your topic quite enough. And if you're struggling to find articles within the last 4 or 5 years from primary sources that are applicable to your topic, maybe you're too narrow. There's really no way to learn this until you do it, right? Because you don't know what's out there. And even if you did know what was out there, it could have changed in like a minute. So, right? This is why it's important to have a variety of strategies and to have an understanding of the scope. Because if you're coming back with 40,000 references, well, you're not narrow enough, right? The purpose of that is so you are well informed on your topic and not selecting sources that support the outcome you wish to have for whatever reason, whether it be unconscious bias, political bias, practice bias, you name it, right? It's important, even if a study does not support your position or the position you want it to, it's important to read it and be aware of it. Okay? So keep those things in mind when you read the feedback on the discussion board for week 2, which is now posted. And although discussion for week 2 is coming up and ending in about 20 minutes at the end of week 2, please go back and read the feedback that I've posted for you and your classmates, because you will see a theme. The theme is narrow down your focus, because as you explore the literature, you will find more. So if you don't start narrow, when you get wider, you'll go too wide. Trust me. Okay. It is recommended that you select a particular strategy within your topic, or a particular approach, a particular program, a particular intervention, or a particular treatment for a research study that you might do in the future that is qualitative and reasonable for someone in your capacity of position to conduct. So if you are a classroom teacher, something reasonable. If you are a counselor, something reasonable. You don't have to save the world, and you won't. Now, you can do that after you're a Master of Education, maybe even after you get your doctorate degree or not. Okay. It is probably the biggest research project you've done to date. It is important. It's exciting, but it does not have to be the biggest end all save the world project that you might be worried about having to complete. You have plenty of time for that later. Okay, I'll help. So let's talk about the annotated bibliography, which is a look ahead, just a quick peek. This is not the assignment due at the end of week 3. This is looking forward. But I like to reference it and bring your attention to it, because sometimes looking forward and working backwards makes a lot of sense. I promise you that the more carefully and precisely you adhere to the earlier assignments, the better off you'll be later. I can't tell you how many students I've seen who didn't take my advice and narrow their topic, and then later they don't have enough resources and they have to start all over again. It's not fun. So please trust me. And if I'm wrong, we'll be wrong together and we'll get you back. Okay. But this is my experience. For assignments 3A and B, this is chapter 2. You will have to be able to use references that are written for each source in APA format. More on that in a minute. You'll need to be able to describe the main ideas, the arguments, the themes, the theses, the methodology, all of that, including the intended audience of each article. And remember, you're going to have at least 16, 8 to start with, and then 8 more. They'll probably end up with around 20-ish. Okay. You will be comparing the sources on the topic to other ones that you found. And this is one of those, it's sort of like whack-a-mole. You have to start by comparing 2 and then bring in another one and compare it. And you have, by the time you're done, you have 16 at least, right? It gets easier. There are different ways to do it. It's just a lot of work, and you have to plan ahead and do it in chunks. You will need to be able to explain why each source is useful for your research topic and how it relates to your topic. And you're going to be tempted to want to move it when you find a really good article. Well, we'll get there. You will need to be able to identify the conclusions and observations of the author or authors. And you will need to have 8 for the first one for assignment 3A. And again for 3B. Okay. So that's upcoming. We have a ways to go until we get there. Let's talk about first, the discussion board for this week, and then assignment 2. This week's discussion board topic is about avoiding plagiarism. And I know you're all really worried about it. And it happens sometimes unintentionally, but trust me, I can tell when you've done it intentionally. Students do it. And it has become easier to do it because we have this new thing called AI and other tools, right? It was about a little over this time last year when I noticed that my middle school students were turning in assignments that seemed awfully polished for their writing skill. I did not understand what was happening. Well, last summer I was in Ithaca, New York with my sister and brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is the provost of a small liberal arts college, about the size of Concordia, and suddenly explained to me that there was this technology out. And oh, well, that's what it is. Well, please know that there are ethical expectations about writing, and that AI and other tools are useful tools, but not a replacement for writing, original writing. And I say this, I don't mean to be insulting, but I cannot tell you how many people I know in my family, including one, a librarian, who say, oh, just use AI for that. I needed to write a letter of recommendation for a former student. So, can you just use AI for that? No, I cannot. It is a tool, yes, but no, I cannot just replace myself with it. It is not appropriate. And I don't have time to persuade people, but just know that is the expectation is you do your original writing. AI and other tools are tools, but not a replacement for it. And we have to consider these things when it comes to plagiarism. So all of the things that we take time to include in our lessons are purposeful. Dr. Webb's videos are purposeful, right? All of them, the librarians, the information specialists, the people in the writing, they're all there prepared and waiting for you, but they cannot help you if you do not access them. Similarly with plagiarism. Here are some tools that will assist you with understanding what plagiarism is considered to be. Please click on the links and watch the videos and practice the paraphrasing. Now, you are early in your research writing careers, and many of you are quite strong, but you still have room to grow. I have referenced in my feedback this nice handout, which I will make another video on later this week, regarding APA basics for Concordia's School of Education graduate programs. Please review them. They are not a substitute for your publication manual, which I'm sorry, that's blurred, but this is your publication manual. But they are helpful because they are common things you need to learn. It's like a cheat sheet to start with. I'm not going to read them all to you here, but I may give you feedback saying, see number 5 of APA Basics for Concordia School of Education graduate programs. I'm referencing you. I expect you to read it if you have not already, and to consider it. Speak with a buddy if you don't understand. Ask for help in the writing studio. Try, and then ask me, okay? Because these are here for a purpose. You have to learn them. The sooner you learn them, the better the rest will go in capstone, I promise. Some of them, as I said, I am still working on, like the not double spacing after a terminal punctuation mark. It's so hard. I don't want to get in the debate. I've been in the debate. Still, I'm going to do it. It happens. I'm trying. Try your best. That's what we ask. There it is, number 9. Use 1 space after each end mark in the body of your paper. It's hard. Okay. There are some tips in here. Please heed them. I did not write this, but I appreciate it. And I expect you to utilize it and adjust. Do not cite secondary sources unless it is virtually impossible to obtain the primary material. If you need some strategies, I want to say tips, but strategy, tricks, approaches on doing that. If you cannot find the information, let me know. I have some ways that I figured out. They're a workaround, but they work. As long as they're valid, it's okay. But do not skip over reading the journal articles. If you cite a journal article, you are saying that you have read it and you are endorsing it as what you are putting forward in your research. There's no shortcut around that. Okay. If the guidelines in this shorter basics sheet are not clear to you, then let's work with the writing studio to find another way to explain it to you, okay? Because we don't get to select the APA manual guidelines, publication guidelines. There is a little bit of interpretation to them. They will tell you this in the writing studio. Your professor's always right. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I adhere to the conventions. However, there's a little bit of interpretation and practice around that. That will always happen in every university, but I try my best to stick to them as well and to adjust because I'm going from version 6 to version 7 in practice. We do this for a reason. The conventions help us to understand and communicate better. And our program here uses APA 7. Other programs use other ones. It's fine. This is what we do. This is what we are expected to do. This is the standard that you must meet in order to be considered a Master of Education, as will be granted to you at the end of your capstone and complete sequence of courses. I can't wait. Excited for you. Okay, so practice, 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 practice till you dream in it. Just kidding, kind of. Here under number 14 is a rule of thumb. It's a suggestion. If paraphrasing would change the meaning, then use a direct quote, but try to avoid direct quotes. But to paraphrase, you're going to read the words, put it down, and recite it, and then write it in your own words. That's one strategy that works really well for a lot of people. I suggest it. And make sure you cite the author and the year using the appropriate conventions. And honestly, if I've given you feedback, maybe I made a mistake, but it's probably around capitalization or publisher or something very nitty-gritty detailed. Probably you can find a year, or you need to look up the convention if you don't have the year on a web page. Use the manual. Okay. So please refer to this handout and know that it is there for your use. Also review the videos. There are some from Purdue OWL. And there is a video on paraphrasing and synthesizing. It gets easier the more you practice it. That's just the way it is. Give it time, give it practice. It gets easier. Okay. There's the rubric on which you will be evaluated. And the task is described here. After viewing the tutorials and working through the exercises, take a passage from one of your literature sources and do it. And then share what you do to improve your paraphrasing skills and offer assistance to your peers. This is the buddy thing at Phone a Friend. It works. Tomorrow I'm going to do a task and I'm asking a buddy. This buddy is a former assistant principal of mine when I was a principal, and it turns out she's my cousin. And we both now are doctors and we need to do a task, and we reached out, we're being buddies. So it works, I promise. Whether she's your cousin or your former colleague, it's a great strategy because when we interact with each other, we learn it differently and we help each other. It lowers stress, and it's just the way we learn as humans, even if you're like me, a little bit of an introvert. Okay. Then after Thursday, comment on your peers, read theirs, and maybe try some of their suggestions. This is purposeful because what works for me may not work for you. What works for you might work for someone else. And what I hear you sharing, I might try. It works that way. Sharing is caring. Okay. And finally, let's talk about chapter 2, which you've already looked forward to, I hope, last week, and which is due by the 14th on Sunday. So far you've been going deep on your educational philosophy and identifying your core values. You've been placing them into discussion and sharing about them. Thank you for that. Now you're going to take what you've read in the literature and you have some knowledge about your topic, and you're going to start to add to it, and you're going to strengthen your ideas. Now, this is where I have cautioned a few of you to stay in your lane and make sure that you are either narrowing your topic or not straying too far from it, or considering migrating a little bit in a different direction that is more appropriate. Or I want to caution you to remember the limits of the capstone. Okay. You will not be conducting quantitative research. You will not be formally collecting data as part of this capstone experience. That would require a different process, which we will not conduct and complete in this capstone. We used to, but we don't anymore. You do not want to collect data without permission, especially from minors, without consent. And we cannot have you do it in Concordia. That being said, there are some things you may do that are reasonable within the scope of what you already do as a teacher. What do we do as teachers? We plan instruction, we deliver instruction, we assess instruction, we report instruction, we repeat, don't we? Right? All that plus reflection. Within that set of responsibilities as teachers, among the other things that we do, other duties as assigned, we collect data, don't we? There are a lot of things you can do that are reasonable within the scope of your current job. We will be doing some of those, including a reflection journal. One qualitative method that is easy to do is a records review. Records review, if you're analyzing or if you're thinking about a program, you may be doing records review by looking at things in the past. That does not require consent because it's already happened, right? But getting access to said records can be a hurdle. So we want to limit you to qualitative research and a topic that is of the right scope and appropriate and reasonable and applies to your practice, because you don't want to do something that's not pertaining to what is valuable and useful to you. So if I'm giving you feedback and encouraging you to stay in your lane, it's for a reason. Don't want you to get to the end and have to go back and redo something because you've put a lot of hard work in this, and it will be a lot more hard work. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. So for assignment number 2, please read the directions carefully. Think about a strong opening sentence to grab the attention of your readers as you do chapter 1. You're going to write your problem and purpose, and many of you have already started. Access that writing studio. And coming up soon are the sample capstones that I'm going to share with you in our shell, our Canvas. Keep in mind they are samples, but none of it's perfect, but it sometimes helps to see something to emulate or to model after. So things like this, make sure your first sentence grabs the attentions of your readers. And go through all of these point by point. Give yourself plenty of time, do it in pieces. You will find that this is carefully prepared for you. It's written there, okay? Your primary and secondary research questions. You have started to draft them. Now we want to make sure that we are carefully stating them in ways that are appropriate to qualitative research. Make sure they're not questions that can be answered with yes or no. Make sure they are not, in general, asking about how much or how many, because that would indicate a different approach that we don't include. We're not doing quantitative research. We're not doing statistics. You can do that later after you're done with your capstone. You can hire someone to do your statistics, or you can do your own, or I'll do them for you, but we're not doing it now, okay? So when you write your research questions, let's really, really focus on getting them as good as we can. That's not to say we can't modify them a little bit if needed, but let's do it. Look at this. What a lovely checklist. I love a checklist. Use it, please. Now, it's a draft chapter 1. It's not the final. It's your first pass at it. We all know it takes grit and perseverance to do hard things. You can do hard things. This will be harder than probably your other Concordia and graduate classes. It should be. It's the capstone. If it weren't hard, it wouldn't be appropriate. It should be within your zone of proximity. And if it's too difficult, then I'll find a way to help you. There's lots of resources here. But it also should challenge you. So you'll know by how it feels. If you're so overwhelmed or frustrated that you cannot proceed, let me know right away. Okay. There are lots of things that we are handling as people and adults that make doing any task hard. But this should not be so hard that you cannot handle it. You would not be here if you didn't belong here. That's why I give you the advice that I do. Give yourself plenty of time, give yourself grace, adjust your expectations. Don't be hard on yourself. It's not helpful, but be accountable, help each other, ask for help, but put in the effort, all the things. You can do it. Okay. So that's assignment 2, and it will be due at the end of this week. I am going to do some other videos later this week. I'm just going to redo them to give you some tips or strategies or approaches on using APA and otherwise managing this task. I'm not going to give you the answers out of the publication manual because you need to develop the skill of looking things up and understanding them and applying them and working together. That's what I do. It's what we all do. It gets easier with practice. If I just told you the answers and what you were doing wrong, you wouldn't be learning. So I try to balance that. I looked over my notes from last summer when I taught this course, and I am implementing some suggestions I made for myself. That's what I do. I'm trying to give you a reasonable amount of feedback without frustrating you so that you can continue to move on and feel accomplished. I don't know if I'm doing that, but I'm trying. So you can do this. Reach out and ask for help. I'll be happy to hear from you. And I have enjoyed speaking with those of you I have so far. Take care and good luck.